And Mike Wiesner logs in first.
Oh, it's Mike
The
Wiesner.
official, everybody says howdy on our program. It's an official
It's a Southern thing.
greeting. Yes.
Well, do they say y'all as well?
They're from Arkansas, they do.
I will.
Or yins. Some people say yins.
Don't be making fun of Southern
Good.
talk.
Gary Albin says Guten Tag. Okay. I guess you can't say howdy tag. So,
You just did.
well, I did. And Bruce, just so you know, I will be sharing this on in Facebook to astronomy groups. I will be sharing this on astronomy groups, dark sky groups, anything like that. Certainly the Arkansas Natural Sky Association page.
How long do you usually do this run?
About an hour. Scott, you didn't say, what'd you say, Bruce?
I didn't say anything.
Scott, you said hello, everyone. You didn't say howdy.
Oh, that's true. I messed up. Okay, so Gary says in German, I guess the equivalent of howdy is why gets or why gets.
We'll have to ask Ingo.
I'll have to ask Ingo. Well, Gary knows what it is.
Oh, yeah.
Becca says, good afternoon, dear fellows around the globe. Here's some Nordic mythology. Wednesday, Onsdag, is in the Nordic countries named after the Old Norse god Odin in Latin. Wednesday is also called Dies Mercuri, that is Mercury's day, and Odin was equated with the Roman god Mercury. Odin is the one god of war and the oldest, foremost, and wisest of the Asa gods, or the Asa gods. And then Becca says, oh, I forgot the most important, howdy. And Gary wants a 140 millimeter carbon fiber. So we'll have to keep an eye out for one, Gary, for sure.
None are in stock right now.
Yeah. But we welcome everybody. Thank you for watching. And our special guest, Bruce McMath, will be someone that can answer all your questions about dark skies. He's been in the game of protecting dark skies for a long time.
Bruce, did you see the show last week?
No, I did not.
Pretty interesting talking about night pollination. And a graduate student from the U of A, his doctoral work was studying how much pollination occurs at night. And his sample set shows half or more in apple and peach orchards.
I need to get his name and add it to our speakers list for the fall festival next.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
October.
It was very interesting.
I recently attended a conference that the Missouri IDA hosted in Springfield, and they had some great speakers along those lines and some other interesting projects. It was pretty much a whole day presentation, a high quality presentation.
I'm Ernie Wright. I work in the Scientific Visualization Studio at NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center. We're looking at a computer model of the view at the south pole of the moon. This is like a time lapse to show the motion of the sun and the Earth and how the shadows change over time. Things don't rise and set in the usual way here. The sun travels around the horizon, never getting more than 1.5 degrees above or below it, so there are always these long shadows. And from here, the Earth appears to be upside down and rotating backwards, but that's just because of our point of view. The Earth doesn't move much in the moon's sky. It's always in roughly the same place, just sort of bobbing around. That's true everywhere on the near side of the moon. It's a consequence of the moon always pointing the same face toward Earth. It takes about a month for the sun to make a complete circuit around the horizon, and every so often, it'll pass behind the Earth, creating an eclipse. I've slowed down time here a little so that it's easier to see. On Earth, that would be a total lunar eclipse, the moon passing through the shadow cast by the Earth. But if you're standing on the moon, it's an eclipse of the sun. The terrain at the South Pole is especially rugged. The rim of Shackleton craters in the foreground here, and the mountain off on the horizon, unofficially known as Mons Malapert. It's about 85 miles away. Shackleton crater is about 13 miles wide. Not quite as wide as the Grand Canyon, but it's twice as deep. Sunlight never reaches the crater floor, so temperatures there are around 300 degrees below 0 Fahrenheit. This model of the terrain is made possible by Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter, which has been mapping the surface of the moon from lunar orbit since 2009. LRO's maps will be incredibly important for exploring the moon and locating water and other resources there.
Well, hello, everybody. This is Scott Roberts from the Explore Scientific and the Explore Alliance. Thanks for giving me the day off yesterday. It was much needed. But we've got an exciting program for you today on FirstLight Chronicles. But first up, we're going to hear from Annie Scarborough about the Explore Alliance. Annie?
Hey, Scott, and everybody. I just was sitting here thinking your little intro makes me want to go grab popcorn. It reminds me of the movies. Or maybe I need an
Howdy,
afternoon.
Annie.
Maybe I need an afternoon snack. I don't know.
You do.
Probably coffee. Anyways, so what I started last week was just kind of going through and highlighting our shows that we have on a day, every day of the week. It's a new one, but we have one Monday through Friday. We have some special things on Saturdays and things like that. But today I wanted to focus on focus on astrophotography broadcast. It airs on Fridays at 4, and I think it goes till 5. But let me just show you this. Okay, so this is just what I'm going to talk about for a minute. Focus on astrophotography is the main goal of it is to help. Hang on just a second. Help those seeking to improve their astrophotography to find the correct answers to the questions that they have. We want to make the journey that they are on an enjoyable one by creating a central location of information. And the host of this broadcast is Tyler Bowman. He is the host of Focus on Astrophotography, as well as he's been on other Explore Alliance broadcasts, many of them. And he's also done our Explore Scientific commercials and tutorials.
And he's an astrophotographer.
Yes, Andy's an astrophotographer. So he started off as a customer service representative here at Explore Scientific. a little over a year ago. And he's now the customer service manager. He says the one thing he loves about working at Explore Scientific is being able to help others reach for the stars. He's been doing astronomy since his late 20s, but remembers always being curious about the night sky. When he was younger, he didn't have the tools to be able to look closer at the sky, but that didn't prevent him from pursuing that hobby. So obviously he's a great astrophotographer right now. So he's been doing that for about 2 years and he's still growing in the hobby. So here's the host of Focus on Astrophotography and the face of our Christmas commercials, Tyler Bowman.
Don't know why you had to say Christmas commercials.
Because you always wear a Santa hat and then a beard, you know. So I have a couple questions for you.
Go for it.
Try not to overtalk your microphone there. Sorry. Okay, what is your favorite telescope?
Favorite telescope? If I had to choose, to be the 127 FCD 100 from Explore Scientific.
Good answer.
Carbon fiber or white tube?
Always carbon fiber. Better for acclimating. Less flexure when I'm trying to focus, when I'm using an automatic focuser. So in my opinion, carbon fiber is the way to go. But if you want an aluminum tube, sure, go for it.
And so why that one? Why particularly that one?
The carbon fiber tube?
No, that particular telescope.
Because it provides, in my opinion, it provides me enough focal length that if I want to do a majority of the deep sky objects, I can. And I can throw a 2 times Barlow on there and I can do planetary as well. So it's a good middle ground telescope, especially getting your feet wet as a beginner or an intermediate astrophotographer because it's so versatile. I have C11s, but it's my strictly planetary one for now until I get more familiar with it so I can use it for deep sky objects because I'm literally zoomed in at 2,800 millimeters of focal length. That's a lot of punching power to zoom in on a deep sky object. So I like the middle ground that the 127 gives me and the versatility that it also gives me.
Okay, and so what is your favorite camera?
Oh, Lord.
Careful.
Yep.
That's really hard for you because I know you have a lot of cameras.
Depending on what I'm doing. If I'm out and about, like at a star party, I'd like to bring my DSLR with a sky tracker, just so I can get the Milky Way. It's usually if I'm in a deep sky, I've never been to very many. I've been to one with Kent, and he was laughing at me because my draw dropped. It was dark compared to what I'm used to. So he had a good giggle. I also use a ZWO 6200 mono and a ZWO 2600 mono, and I just picked up a ZWO 294 MC Pro. So I'm kind of liking it, ZWO stuff.
Well, obviously, if you have 3 of them. Okay, so my final question is, I'm glad you talked about dark sky sites. So my question is what dark sky site, what one dark sky site could you visit if you had the chance anywhere in the world? Where would it be?
Chile, or I'm sorry, Scott, Chile.
Is that what it is, Chile?
Chile. There's an observatory. I can't remember the observatory, but I believe it is a Bortle. I think it's close to a Bortle 1, but it's really, really on a Bortle 2.
It's Sierra de Tolo.
Yeah, that one.
That's a Bortle 0, basically.
Okay, sorry, Bortle 0.
Yeah.
That would be the one if I could go to. But if I could stay in the States, I'd like to go to, I believe it's Landers Park, which is in Arizona. Because there's a lot of cool little mountain scenes that would be great for wide field photography with a DSLR. And it's next to a bunch of people that I know already. So we could meet up and do what we love to do, is look at the stars and talk about astrophotography.
So that is the host of Focus on Astrophotography. And so since we are talking about that, we're going to go ahead and announce our winners from our last contest, which was solar imaging. And so I'm going to share my screen again.
Solar system.
Oh, solar system. So, okay, let's see here. Our never before seen is going to be, so I can get to play, Ben-Hur. And he shot this M42 Orion's Nebula with a 102 triplet and a Canon T6 DSLR.
Sorry, Thomas Her or Tommy Her.
Tommy Her. Oh, it's Tommy. You told me it was Ben.
I'm sorry. I probably did. Sorry, Tommy. It's Tommy. This is Tommy Her. I never before
Tommy
seen.
Her.
You're so hung up in your Roman mythology, you came up with Ben-Hur.
You guys
What
have to
does
go to the corner and time out?
what does never before seen mean?
It is a. Oh, Andy, do you want to get?
No. You go ahead.
It is someone that. So we've had 5 or 6 astrophotography contests, and he has never entered. This is the first actual contest he has entered, and that's our never before seen category. Is someone who we've never seen before enter, and we want to recognize that individual for their accomplishment, because I mean it's M42. It's starting to rise up now early, and it's a great shot in my opinion.
I'll tell you, my first shot in 42 was not near this good. So
And this is unprocessed. That's the beauty part.
good job.
What did he shoot it with? Do you know? Was it DSLR or? Yeah. We
Yes, it
can't hear
was.
your head. Tyler.
I didn't know if Annie wanted to jump in on that. She has those stats.
Yeah, I do. He shot
So,
this with.
So Tommy Herr is watching. He's also, his handle is Texas Backyard Astronomy in Glen Rose, Texas. Good job, man.
Yeah. So he shot that with a T6 DSLR. That's what he shot that with. So, all right. Third place goes to Matthew McAlily. I don't know how to say that. I'm so sorry if I butchered. Yeah, I am sorry if I butchered McAlily. He shot this Saturn with a 10-inch Daub, a Canon T3i, and a 2x Barlow.
That's impressive.
Do you have any details on the stack or anything?
I don't know if Tyler has
Give me a
that.
second. I can pull it real
Got
quick.
some detail. Look at
Yeah,
that.
he got a lot of detail on the Cassini ring. He got a lot of detail on a Daub. And that was the amazing part.
Which means it's probably a push to, not a go-to Daub, not
More
a
than
tracking
likely.
Daub. So this is a push to stacked image.
I'm pulling up the information. It was, it doesn't list how many frames at all, unfortunately. But he used PIP, Registack, and GIMP. That's all it says. Not sure how many frames he used, unfortunately.
He is on the show right now. He's saying there was no tracking. He used PIP auto stacks. Is that how you say that?
Registacks.
Okay. But he doesn't say how many, if like, that's all.
No, it doesn't say how many frames he used to stack. It doesn't.
I bet
Yeah,
it was
but
more
it's
than
very
one or
cool.
two.
It's very
I-
good.
I would say so too.
Matthew is watching right now, and he says, I think it was about 300 frames.
It's not bad for 300
And no
frames.
tracking.
That's impressive. Annie, you're also muted.
Thank you. Okay, second place goes to Pekka Hautala. Always say that wrong. Hautala.
Hautala.
Hautala. He used a Lunt with an ASI 178 on this solar sun.
No, I will know or tell Pekka that he has improved dramatically on his solar imaging.
In the last, what, month? He's been
Give
in
or
for
take,
2
yeah.
months.
Yeah,
Month
with
or
the
two?
with the dedicated solar scope, he has improved a lot.
Yeah. I love the granulation, the sunspots, the flares. I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on in this image. It's really nice.
Now, all of these images are going into the next issue of Skies Up magazine as well. So
And they'll be printed and mailed it takes some time to do that, but we get them printed and mailed. They get a copy of them. And then they also receive prizes. Everybody gets a prize.
very cool.
So,
So-
Annie, are these like 5x7s that we send them?
I don't think so.
18 by 24.
Yeah, that's what I think they are.
Oh, yeah, that's what I thought.
So that's going to look real good.
Mhm. All right, so our first place winner goes to Aaron Thompson. This is the Hunter's Moon. He shot this with an 80 millimeter, and then an IXOS 100 and on with a Nikon D5500 5500, right, Tyler? A QHY-462C and a Q, yeah.
That's impressive. I like the cloud.
Yeah, me too.
It's beautiful.
It almost looks like the clouds behind the moon.
Mhm.
It does.
You know, the way that you get this glow of the moon around it and stuff, and then it sort of fades off, so that kind of makes the moon pop more. But very cool. You can, every time I see the moon in this kind of orientation, of course, I always see the rabbit in the moon. So I don't know if you guys see that, but
Have you been drinking?
not yet.
Yes,
Coffee.
a lot of coffee.
A lot of
He's
coffee.
He's
Oh
drinking
yeah, I
coffee
did have a
and
lot
didn't
of
share.
coffee today. No, rabbit.
All right.
Its ears are kind of laid back, you know. So yeah.
All
Anyways,
right. That's all I have for today. So next week
Awesome.
I'll highlight somebody else or one of our other shows, and we'll continue to do that until we work through those, and then we'll move on to something else great in Explore Alliance. So
thanks a lot, guys. Thank
Mhm.
you. So here we go. Let's take that off, and we're going to go to Ken. I'm going to have you introduce Bruce McMath.
I'll do that. Hey, everybody. Glad you're here with us on what is this, the 57th? Is that what I think this is? Is that right?
58.
Scott? 58th FirstLight Chronicle. We continue our focus on light pollution. And we've had some couple of really good programs. This is going to be another one. I'm working on somebody for next week. Don't know what it's going to be yet, but we're going to continue on light pollution next week. But today we have an acquaintance of mine, a person I call a friend, Bruce McMath. He's a retired lawyer in the firm McMath Woods in Little Rock, Arkansas. His light pollution comes to his interest in astronomy like most of us do, but he embraces a whole wide range of disciplines to attack light pollution, because it's not just about astronomy, it's about security and safety, and he's going to talk about more of that. He's a past president of the Central Arkansas Astronomical Society and is a member of the American Association of Variable Star Observers, where he has served as a member of the Photometric Validation Team. That's a mouthful. And he is currently chair of the Arkansas Natural Sky Association, which is the statewide affiliate of the International Dark Sky Association. I could go on, but that's going to take away from time from Bruce. So Bruce, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us. Tell us a little bit of how you got started in astronomy and what led you to the point that you were at today.
Well, in astronomy or in the dark sky?
Yeah, started astronomy. Start about astronomy.
Yeah.
What
Well,
led
I'll
to
tell you
that
how
today?
I got involved in astronomy is that, of course, I'm a space race baby. You realize, I grew up during that exciting time, and I still have an image in my mind of the what was that Navy rocket that I'm trying to remember what the name of it was. Now I'm drawing a blank. At any rate, the Navy and the Army in those days were competing with each other, trying to get a rocket satellite in orbit after the Sputnik. And I remember watching the Navy one go up about 30 feet,
Yeah.
then come back down and blow up. But at any rate, that's where I got my interest in space and astronomy and all that. And then when I became a father, my oldest son wasn't excelling in school like I thought he might. And I said, you know what I need to do is get him interested in something. And so I bought a telescope for him, and I got hooked. So that's how I got into astronomy. And of course, that led to the dark sky interest, as you pointed out. But then I also have a background and an interest, a longstanding background and interest in the environment in general. And when you start studying this dark sky issue, you begin to realize that it's a multispectral spectrum environmental problem. It's not just seeing the stars. And so that's how I got pulled into becoming more active.
And it's completely preventable.
Yeah, I mean, you can't completely do away with it, but we can if we use responsible lighting. I got some slides I can show you later to show what can be done with Flagstaff and Tucson and so forth, and some of these places that have gotten serious about this. It's amazing you can see the Milky Way. I've been told you can see the Milky Way from inside Flagstaff.
My wife
it can be done.
My wife confirms that she was in Tucson with my youngest son playing baseball a few years ago, and she can confirm that in Tucson, where they were staying, you could see the Milky Way at night. In a town in a large, significantly town, you can see the Milky Way at night. In a town of, I don't know, hundreds of thousands, if not a million or more people. And the Milky Way is visible.
I was in Tucson about, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago, maybe not even that long ago. And I was just in the second floor of a hotel, and I was looking out the window, and I was struck by how you couldn't see any of the lights directly.
You posted a picture on Facebook, didn't you?
I don't know whether I did or not, but it looked like the street was lit itself, was the luminous body was the street, because you could not see the fixtures, the light sources themselves. You could see the shadows of the fixtures, of course.
Yeah. All right, well, let's go ahead and jump into your presentation, share your screen, and let's get into your presentation.
So this is a highly truncated version of what I give when I'm lucky enough to get invited to speak to various kinds of groups, mostly environmental groups. And interestingly enough, by the way, I find that the environmental community is more likely, people who are involved in the environment are more likely to become actually involved in this and become paying members and so forth than amateur astronomers are, which I think is interesting. Another little demographic note before I get into this is I've been struck by the fact, and perhaps this is part of the same phenomenon, that on our Facebook group page, Arkansas Natural Sky Association, about 2/3 of the members are female, not males. And when we've done marketing for different things on our Facebook organization page, that's the kind of response we get also. It's heavily weighted female. But at any rate, this is a picture a friend of mine took, and fellow cast member, John Reed from Boston, Arkansas, of this, as everybody on this watching this will know, of the summer Milky Way. And I like to show this just to remind people that just a few generations ago, this is what all our kind of sky all our ancestors lived under. And of course, if I'm dealing with a non a lay audience, I point out a few things. I think it enhances their interest. But the real point is to show that we've traded that for this, and in about 90% of the population now lives under a light polluted sky, so much so that you can't see the Milky Way. I was at a sustainability conference at the Little Rock branch of the University of Arkansas 2 weeks ago, and I did an informal poll of the students that came by our table, and 4 out of 40 had ever seen the Milky Way with their
These
eyeballs.
are students in a rural state.
Yeah.
Where you,
Well, and a lot of these students were international students too. There was another
okay.
interesting element to it. But there's, this picture tells us a lot. First of all, there's a huge amount of wasted energy. As you can see, there's absolutely no point in lighting the sky. And so that makes this a carbon and climate change issue. I think about 6% of our electricity in this country is used for lighting. I don't have a figure for how much of that is outdoors, but 100-watt light bulb, incandescent light bulb, that's powered by a coal-fired power plant generates almost a half a ton of carbon if it's left on all night for a year.
That's half a ton a year. That's a
carbon
ton in
dioxide.
4 years.
Yeah,
That's a
of carbon
ton.
dioxide. And just think of all the lights that are left on in this country, and for that matter, around the world.
I use
Mostly with
that.
no purpose. Mostly with no purpose.
I use that figure when I'm talking about light pollution. I'll say, who here, your parents ever said, or you ever said, don't leave your light on, it wastes electricity? And of course, everybody will raise their hand because they've either heard it or said it. And that really doesn't have much impact. But when you start talking about a single light bulb producing 1 ton of carbon in 4 years, that becomes a very quantifiable measure, and it shocks people what that number is. And I use that number to really drive home how much one single light bulb can use. So,
and about half of the parks are National Park Service, which is very much involved, by the way, in this dark sky issue. Estimates that half the electricity or light that's used for outdoor lighting is wasted. And I'm pretty sure that that's just on account of the lack of shielding and direction. And because if you took into consideration the amount of light that's left on that's doing nothing, it would be a lot larger percentage than that. So I say that we'll know we finally gotten serious about climate change when we start turning the lights out. Now, this has snuck up on us in a way. You can look at it 2 ways. It's a very recent phenomenon on the one hand, in terms of human history and the environment, but it happened slowly enough that it's sort of been like the proverbial frog in a slowly boiling pan. People just didn't notice what we were doing for the longest time as this took place. And it's, as you know, only fairly recently that people have started to say, wait a minute. Of course, we appreciate what we've lost as usual. And suddenly people are waking up, or finally waking up, and to the problem. Now, most people watching this are going to know about the many other environmental impacts besides hiding the stars. One of the most powerful arguments we have comes from the American Medical Association. In 2009, they issued their first public health statement about the risks of exposure to light at night. You say this to people, and at first blush, they say, well, that's crazy. How can that be? But then when you think about it, it makes total sense, because the Earth is known night and day for 4.5 billion years. And everything that's evolved on the surface of this planet has evolved in that cycle, that diurnal cycle.
except for the past 100 years.
Yeah, except for the last, really 50 years probably. And our bodies are, and that of all animals are keyed into this cycle. It drives a diurnal hormonal process. You have receptors in our eyes. We have receptors in our eyes that are not for seeing. They're just there to tell us whether it's night or day, and when to shift our hormonal gears. And the exposure to artificial light suppresses or delays that process, and can lead to diabetes, depression, obesity, all of which are epidemic in modern society, along with breast and prostate cancer, which are also been increasing in modern society. And then the American Medical Association also pointed out that glare is a safety hazard, and poor lighting generates glare. So the American Medical Association, it says we need to use fully shielded, energy efficient lights. And then in
Bruce, hang on, go back to that previous slide.
Sure.
When we're talking about glare and how is glare a safety hazard? It's a safety hazard when you're driving down the road and come around a corner and light shines brightly into your eyes, and it makes you unable to see what's around you, the shoulders of the road, the lane, what's on the other side of the light. That's where glare lighting is a safety hazard.
That's exactly right.
Right.
So
that example, everybody's experienced that. They don't know if they drive. They don't know the name for it, but that's what that is. That's glare.
And the more blue light there is in the light, the worse it is. It can actually be painful. You know, for a while there, new cars were coming out with the blue headlights.
Right.
Yeah.
And people would think that their lights from the approaching car were on bright when they weren't. It's a very bad idea to have high blue light content in a headlight or in any light that shines on the road. So in 2016, they came around and targeted now this has been controversial in the lighting industry, and targeted this blue light concern because LEDs in the native setting tend to have a lot of blue light. And so the AMA came out and joined the IDA for different reasons, arguing that we should use warm colored lights. We were able to get a week's worth of Here's to Your Health program on done by the University of Arkansas Medical School on public radio a few years back. I don't know whether that's still available on the whether you can find it on the internet or not, but it was good. And so this is a real issue. Of course, everybody knows about the cell phones by now.
Yeah,
the night shift feature.
Yeah, turn on your night shift if you have an iPhone. Android has another setting. I don't know what it's called, but you can set it so that at sunset, your phone implements a red filter effectively to filter out the blue light. Or it turns off the blue light, so it helps you go to sleep effectively and gets you ready for the night.
Now, your speaker last week talked about pollination. This light pollution is a growing body of evidence, is impacting the insect population. It's not just, it's the feeding, breeding, pollinating. This is sort of the base of the food chain for birds and so forth. So this is not an insignificant concern. Germany recently passed a national law addressing light pollution, specifically because they were concerned it was contributing to a decline in biomass, a measurable decline in biomass. And of course, there's the birds. Audubon and IDA have joined up an alliance to try to address the problem of light pollution impact on migrating birds. The majority of birds migrate at night, and they can get disoriented by the lighting in the cities, and sometimes just fly themselves to death, run into buildings. Millions, it's estimated, Audubon estimates millions die each year in this regard. So it's not an inconsequential problem either.
Hey, Bruce, on the Wing show that I do on Thursdays, we've discussed that issue about people in New York City. There's a woman who goes on an early morning walk every morning around the World Trade Center complex, picking up and documenting the species and numbers of birds. We've also talked about a organization called Birdcast that predicts bird migrations based on weather and radar soundings to predict when peak migration days and weeks are, in an effort to get the large cities in the Central Flyway specifically to turn out their skyscraper lights or reduce their lighting between certain hours to facilitate exactly what you're talking about. And on some nights, there's more than 1 billion birds migrating, and they can count. It's amazing. The radar lets them count the individual birds, and they can get a solid count of how many birds are migrating. And up until the advent of radar, it was completely unseen and unknown that those birds were up there and migrating in the numbers they were, because you can't see them and you can't hear them unless they're snow geese or something migrating at night. But the songbirds and the hummingbirds just fly and don't make any noise. So,
well, interestingly, there is a way you can see at least some of them. I had an Audubon enthusiast friend suggest that we coordinate an event where you go out on a full moon night I gather with binoculars, and when the migration is taking place, and try to see the birds. Apparently, you can. That sounds like an interesting little exposure to nature to me, but we haven't arranged to make that happen yet. But I think that would be fun. The final impact I'd like to talk about, you don't see come up very often, and that's the social and cultural impact of isolating ourselves from the reality of our place in the universe. I mean, when I was a kid, you could see the stars, and you lay out on a summer night and let your imagination wander between the stars. That's a soul cleansing and mind expanding experience. And the vast majority of youngsters growing up in this country today have never had that experience. Instrument pilots have a phrase that is really important to being an instrument pilot, and that is called a situational awareness. You have to know where you are in time and space to fly under instruments. And I think our culture impacts how we live our lives. It impacts our politics. And at the end of the day, that's driven by our worldview, our perspective, or what the Germans call Weltanschauung. I think I'm pronouncing that. I may be butchering that, but that means it's worldview, but a bigger concept than worldview. It's your total assumption about reality. So we create an artificial world. People live in an artificial world. And I think it's, I don't know how you measure the importance of that, but I know some years ago when we first got our observatory site, I'm talking about Central Arkansas Astronomical Society, we would have school groups out, including particularly groups of at-risk youth. And these kids had never been out of the city. And they get on a school bus, and ride out into the country, and then offload and view the Milky Way and a sky full of stars for the first time. And you can see the impact on them. So I think this is a serious, significant aspect of light pollution, and the only way to deal with it is to become responsible lighters. And of course, parks are good, but a lot of kids can't get to these parks. So, then we just talk about the sources of improper lighting, and obviously improperly aimed and shielded fixtures, overlighting, which has become a bigger problem with LEDs. We invested a lot of money, the federal government did, in helping develop this lighting technology, LED, in hopes of saving energy. And it's been a big success indoors, but what's happened outdoors is people just use more light because it's cheaper. I mean, it uses less energy, so they just create more light mindlessly. Unmonitored dusk to dawn lighting, failure to use timers and sensors, vanity lighting, and marketing lighting. All these are sources of irresponsible lighting. And I'm going to fly through these. We leave signs on all night, even though there's nobody out. You can turn those off on timers without any problem whatsoever, and save all electric.
Or now with LEDs, you can dim them automatically.
Yeah, you can dim them. Absolutely. Building egos. I mean, all these big buildings leave their lights on. Of course, that's a big problem for the birds that we discussed. It's a complete waste of energy, and by 11 or 12 o'clock at night, nobody's looking anyway. This residential lighting, architectural lighting, if you want to put a good word on it, seems to be a fad that has taken off, and it just seems to me is oblivious to the problems we face with the environment and climate change and so forth and so on. But again, if you really need that, you can put it on a timer. There's no milkman anymore at 5 o'clock in the morning.
Let's go back to that real quick.
Sure.
A lot of people see this as a safety issue.
Yeah.
Because if they have these lights, then criminals aren't going to come break into my house.
Yeah. Well, that has been marketed by the electric utility companies. They have a very vested interest in driving up the use of electricity at night. There's no throttle on a coal-fired power plant. And so they have to build their network to serve the daylight demand, 3 o'clock in the afternoon on an hot August day. They got to have the power to meet that demand. And then at night, that all goes away. So they have heavily marketed this. And, at first blush, it makes sense because if it's common sense that if you were surveilling someplace and you lit it up, that it would discourage people from doing bad things. The problem is most of this lighting is on when nobody's looking. and criminals are not cockroaches. I call this the cockroach theory of security light. They're not cockroaches. They're human beings, and they need light like anybody else to get around. So what you end up doing is attracting and facilitating crime, not discouraging it.
And there's studies. This is not your opinion.
Right.
There are studies by the FBI that hold this out, that bear this out.
Well, the Justice Department has did a special study on what works and what doesn't in preventing crime, and their conclusion on lighting is that it is likely to encourage it and facilitate it as it is to discourage it. The British government, they've been turning down and turning off public street lighting for years now, and they've started this to save money and save carbon. But their CDC has done a study on it. No increase in crime, and no increase in accidents. In fact, there's been a slight decrease in violent crime.
Bruce, I quote you periodically because I think I attribute this to you. You may have gotten it from somebody else, but if light was an antiseptic for crime, there would be no light in the daytime. No, I mean, no crime
in the daytime.
in the
daytime. Most burglaries occur in the daytime. Criminals need light, and they don't go around in striped suits with bandanas on. So, just because there's light doesn't mean they're going to be discouraged. To the contrary. And, Chicago did a lighting study of its alleys, and sure enough, they lit that when the alleys they lit, crime went up. Didn't go down. And you can go on. There's just no scientific evidence that just lighting someplace, putting a light out there that's not being surveilled, does anything to discourage crime. Now, that's not to say that you don't want to light places where people are active and out and about, both primarily for safety, but perhaps also for security purposes. But this thing of just having a yard light that's on all night is doing nothing except draining money from your pocket into the utility company's bank account on an automatic month-by-month basis.
Okay, Bruce, let's go on real quick. Hang on, let's pause here. I think
Sure.
See if Scott has any comments that have come up or questions that we can answer.
Yeah, there's a few here. Let's see. Martin Eastburn is chatting on about when he was flying into Los Angeles with streetlights on. Once we got to their level, smog was so high it was several hundred feet. It was several hundred feet up. He said it was really ugly flying in from Austin or Dallas. Pekka Haltila, who's a dark sky, ambassador in Stockholm, Sweden, who's had some real effect in his neighborhood and also in his city in Stockholm. He says nature's evolution is created in billions of years, and we have polluted it with light in the last 50 years so much that it takes billions of years for nature to adapt to our stupidness.
Yep.
Let's see.
We'll be gone before nature adapts to our
They'll take care of it, I guess, so it would be sad that that's the case. Let's see. And Pekka said that light pollution also affects police officers with their red and blue lights. um, in trying to catch criminals.
I've seen a trend in the past 10 or 15 years of police lights. In Arkansas, police are all blue lights mostly, of getting brighter and brighter and brighter to the point that they're dangerously bright because you can't see anything else. And I don't know, Bruce, have you ever experienced that?
That's not something that I've taken note of.
It's been overwhelming at some places. You get 5 or 6 police cars at a wreck and you can't see anything but these bright blue lights flashing, and you can't see anything else around you. All right, Scott, what else you got?
Yeah, our friend in Glen Rose, Texas says, I dislike the huge light poles along the interstate throughout Fort Worth, Texas. Unbelievable amount of unnecessary lighting. I've noticed that too, driving through Dallas, Fort Worth.
It's like our cars don't have headlights in the cities.
Yeah,
And he also-
I think they. I have read, and I'm not. I won't vouch for it, but it's
Mhm.
probably true that the lighting standards that have been created for highways and roads were based upon. Ignore the fact that you have headlights. That's not considered in determining how much illumination you need.
I wouldn't doubt that a bit. I mean, because you can drive, and I'm sure it's been a few years since I've been in the DFW area, but I suspect you can drive on any interstate at night in DFW and not use your headlights and be perfectly fine.
Yeah, and perhaps not notice that you don't have your headlights on,
Right.
which itself is a safety hazard.
Right.
Sure. Pekka is suggesting that the state should put heavy taxes on lighting the facade of private and commercial buildings. Our friend in Glen Rose says, you should just get a dog instead of outdoor lights. A dog will do much more effective as far as pinpointing an intruder. That's for sure.
Well, that's absolutely for sure.
Yeah.
Of course, the Illumination Engineering Society recommends motion sensor lights if you're looking for security, put the lights on motion sensors, more likely to work.
I've asked people, do you have a security light in your backyard? They say yes. And I said, do you stay up all night looking in the backyard to see if there's a criminal coming up? And they'll say, well, no. And I'll say, well, okay, then what's the benefit of that light then? If you're not
lights can't see. Lights can't see.
And they'll look at me quizzically and realize, huh? And I said, but if it was on a motion detector and that light pops on bright, and suddenly you're going, wait a minute, why is that light on? And so you're going to go look. Scott, you got anything else?
No, that's it for right now.
Okay, I really like this series that you've got, Bruce, because Bruce has sent me his PowerPoint just in case something happened. I could use his PowerPoint, but he's here. This is very interesting, Bruce. What's going on here?
So, well, as I indicated, the utility companies like to market this their lighting as security lighting, so you get it and leave it on all night. And they actually, at least around here, they advertise this as if they are a professional.
You took this picture.
Yeah, I took this picture. Professional lighting experts and security to provide security. That's if I could get a good expert, I would litigate this because before the Public Service Commission, because I think it's a fraud. I brought a pro bono. I handled a pro bono case for a person that's arises out of this incident here that's in the picture. And I took the deposition of several of the company representatives, and this is a major regional electrical utility. Well, it's Entergy. And they admitted that they have no expertise in security and no expertise in lighting.
Because their expertise is in selling electricity.
Yeah, their expertise is in selling electricity. And they tried to say the client picked these lights out, the owner of this apartment complex. But they put these 1,000-watt fixtures in and then aimed them horizontally.
So half their lights going up instead of down on the ground.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's the IES Illumination Engineering Society would recommend 30 lux in this kind of situation. This was 530 underneath the pole, and because it's grossly overlit is poor lighting. and you can, this illustrates that because you can't see past that first pine tree there. It's pitch dark. And the reason is your eyes have adjusted to this gross over illumination in the foreground. And so you can't penetrate, even though there's a light shining down in that direction. Your eyes can, you only have, your eyes have a fairly narrow, once they adapt to a given level of light, they have a fairly narrow band of
So
contrast that they can handle. And
so
it
there's
just goes black.
so there could be a bad guy standing out there just behind that second
Exactly.
pine tree in wide open. And as long as
Exactly.
he's wearing dark colors and
I think he
doesn't
could
move,
be wearing a white suit and you wouldn't know it. And then what in addition, all these apartments on either side, this is a low income housing deal. They only have one window to the outside, and every one of them had covered their windows over in
With
order
blackout.
to keep
Blackout curtains.
to keep the light out. So now they're not getting light in the daytime. This is a health. This is a mental health issue. It's a depression generating situation. So it's just lousy light, and they are selling this as if now the person that brought the suit that I represented, his house was in the direction that light is pointing. Here he's reading a book in his backyard, 260 feet from the fixture. So this is just a gross example.
okay,
of
go back to that.
lighting.
That's like trespass. Okay.
Yeah,
That's just like a person trespassing. They don't have any right to be in your backyard or come into your house. That's trespassing. Light trespass is light that shines on property that's not yours.
that's right. And
Right.
that's right. And a lot of people don't know this, but the Illumination Engineering Society has done a study on how much light most people would find objectionable. So you can bring, in my opinion, you can bring a successful nuisance lawsuit if someone is shining a whole lot of light on your property. Well, that's what we did here.
And were you successful in this lawsuit?
We were able to get them to re-aim the light and solve the problem. We did not go forward and try to
Well,
collect damages.
that
for
was a
various reasons.
That was a Band-Aid.
Yeah,
You didn't fix
and
the
they
problem.
paid our costs.
Yeah.
Uh,
You fixed the problem for this couple, but that light is still doing the same thing it does.
Yeah, well, no, it's aimed down now, so it doesn't shine. Well, yeah, the overlighting is still there. Well,
Right.
Actually, I understand it's gone out and nobody's bothered to fix it.
I wonder if somebody used an automatic off switch on it.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But at any rate, this is another wonderful example of poor lighting. Here you can see how the lighting is aimed horizontally, so that how much you can see it going up into the sky. Again, you can see that it's too much light. It's also got too much blue in it. It's white light. You can see how black it is back there where the light's not hitting directly. And then it looks like snow. I hope you can see this.
Those
It
are
looks
bugs.
Those are bugs flying themselves to death.
Yeah,
So
they're-
this picture captures
they're-
a whole lot.
They're caught in a light trap.
Here's another. This is a restaurant that went in near my 2 blocks from my house. And they put in these lights. The building's been there forever. They stuck these lights in there. Again, you can see how this impacts your vision. You can't see past that
The
insulator.
awning, the
Yeah,
red
right.
vehicle.
Completely black down there. Way too much light. The right amount of light would allow you to see what you need to see here, but not blind you beyond.
Was it on Cantrell or somewhere?
That was on Kavanaugh. and
Kavanaugh,
Beechwood,
okay.
Beechwood. So responsible lighting principles. This is real simple to do the right light responsibly. You only use light where you need it, which means using fully shielded, properly aimed fixtures. Only light when you need it. That means using motion sensors, timers, and switches. Avoid overlighting and use the appropriate color. If we did those things, we would greatly reduce light pollution. And we see that we're making some progress. This when you see new street lights now, they look like the one on the right, not the one on the left. So some good things are happening. I just happened to drive by this. Somebody had put some light on. These are good down lights. This is a ballpark near Springdale, Arkansas.
This is the Shiloh Christian Field.
Yeah, and this light system is set up to shine and illuminate from above, and you can see how effectively it does that without going up in the sky. marketing, this is how a responsible filling station would look versus what we often see. I'm just throwing
Go
these
back to
out.
that. Go back to that last picture real quick. You're farther away in the top picture. You're farther away, and look at the glare and
Yep.
light that's hitting your eye.
Yeah.
On the lower picture, you're significantly closer, and under it, the ground's lit up, the pumps are lit up, but there's no glare.
You
There's
see
none of
everything
that
you need.
overwhelming
You
brightness.
see everything you need to see.
Right.
One of the great things about LED lighting is you can target it, unlike the old style lighting, which you just sort of went out in circles, and you'd have to put a patchwork together like on the left and put a lot of light where you didn't want it. With LED, you can put it right where you want it. You can you can model it on a computer, which is what this is. So how are we going to get all this done? Well, the way to get it done is with education, and one of the great places to do educating is at star parties and dark sky parks and urban sky parks. In the Missouri chapter of the IDA has got a big program going where they're trying to get urban parks to become urban sky parks. It's
Do
really
we know
exciting.
that person, Bruce?
We all know that person.
I thought so.
She ran for president of the United States not too long ago.
That's what I thought.
Wow.
This is Hillary Clinton at a Pinnacle Mountain State Park star party just outside of Little Rock.
A few years ago.
A few years ago.
Maybe
Right.
a few decades ago.
I thought I'd just throw that in for fun. When you bring this to people's attention, I guess I was a little bit pleasantly surprised how well it gets received. There is no ingrained opposition to responsible lighting except ignorance in the utility companies.
The biggest issue against it that I have, when you say, end light pollution or reduce light pollution, people think, they hear, take away all my lights.
Right.
And once you get them past that and get them to understand what we're talking about, they're exactly like you. It becomes very acceptable to them.
And frankly, that's the reason we called our chapter the Arkansas Natural Sky Association.
We had a large
and not the Dark Sky Association, because any salesman knows you first got to get your foot in the door, and and once you get your foot in the door, maybe you have a chance. But if you start out with feeding this implication that what you're really trying to do is just get rid of all the lights, you can't get your foot in the door. You don't get an open mind to talk to.
And you saw that, and I had seen that over and over again when you say dark skies. So you changed it to the board. We had a discussion of 3 or 4 names, and the Natural Sky Association, Arkansas's slogan is the natural state. So it plays well with the State Parks Commission. And it's a much less, what would you call it?
Well, it's just not as scary sounding, and it doesn't communicate what we don't intend, which is we don't intend to take everybody's lights away from. Artificial lighting is useful, and we're not going to get rid of it.
If it's the right amount in the right location.
What we can do is use it responsibly.
Right.
So we went to one of the things we did early on was to get started on the Buffalo River becoming an international dark sky park. That took about 2.5 years. And during that process, we went to the little town of Gilbert, which is the only community located on the river. It's also the smallest incorporated city in the state. And one of the rangers and I went there to tell them what we were doing and to talk about why the park was trying to get designated. And they listened to us and they said, we need to change. We want to be part of this. What do we got to do? And we say, well, the first thing you need to do is change your street lights, because they have these open bottom barnyard lights that they get from Entergy that throw light everywhere. And we've been working on that for 2 years. And we got a California lighting contractor to come in and help us out for $1, Tanco Lighting. And we've negotiated. We got the local state senator. And so this picture shows that where the town council has turned out, and we're looking at several different lights to choose what's going to go in. And hopefully in the very near future, these will be installed.
To put in
Is it-
perspective of how small the town is, that's about a fifth of the population
Yeah,
in the
that's
photograph.
That's right. It's about a fifth of the resident population. It's a little bit of a tourist town, and so there are, what do you call them? Places where people take vacations.
Bed and breakfast,
Yeah,
Airbnbs. There's an
Airbnb.
RV
Airbnb.
campground. There's a canoe company there. I mean,
Right.
it's
right.
literally on the banks of the river.
So they chose some 28 watt, 2700 Kelvin, zero up light fixtures. We wanted to have them where they could be dimmed or turned off. Entergy would not. These are still going to be Entergy lights. Unfortunately, we couldn't. Our state law doesn't allow us to municipalize the lights, or at least it was not clear that it did in the city. Fathers didn't want to fight it out. So these are going to be Entergy lights, but they'll be zero up light, 28 watt, 2700 Kelvin, and that will cut the city's energy use for these street lights to 1/5 what it currently is. It will put the light along the road instead of in people's bedrooms, and it'll be more even lighting by far than what they currently have.
How many
So
street lights? How many street lights are in Gilbert?
16.
And there's 28 people.
Yeah,
Population is, I think, 28. Yeah.
about 28.
And so Entergy is going to allow them to put these up on the poles, or is Entergy going to have?
They're going to install them.
this?
They're going to install them, and a special tariff is being created for this. They've got to go before the Public Service Commission and get their tariff approved. But we're going to get our lights.
Despite Entergy's
Yeah,
best efforts.
It's been a battle.
So we had a Dark Sky Festival planned. I said I'm involved a little bit, but COVID and the weather canceled that out. It's going to be rescheduled for next year. But the problem we face is Entergy won't turn the lights off.
Yeah, they won't turn the lights off, but we're hoping that with these lights, and we'll add some additional shielding, although these are zero up light, you can still add additional shielding to them. The manufacturer makes it to further cut them off. And we're hoping that with these new lights and additional shielding, that the churchyard where we were going to hold our observing site will suffice. If it's not, we will have fallback. We will either do it on the Tyler Bend campground, or we'll do it at there's a nearby what's it called, Bear Creek Cabins.
Right.
Has a large area. So we'll get these lights in and we'll see what it looks like. I have been in the backyard. A friend of mine has a house there, and in their backyard, with a sky meter, I measured 21.4, I think.
Pretty good.
Yeah. That's almost as good as at Tyler Bend.
Mm-hmm.
And that's with the current lights. But of course, I'm in their backyard, not on the street. But I'm hopeful that we will have a nice dark sky right there in town.
That'd be something to brag about, that's for sure. We have a few more comments here. Tarak, who's and the United Emirates, says we do need street lights, LED or not, for driving, but not because of stealing or criminals. He says, each house here has enough LED security with lights all around. That's enough for security. It doesn't affect the sky much, but the street lights are. And I think that's what you see. I've heard that's where much of our light pollution is from street lighting itself.
I can make a good argument that, driving at night out in the country is not a problem for me. I can see the road fine. I can see the sides of the road fine.
Okay, Mark, here's the thing though, in an urban setting where street lighting is useful, is where you have a potential pedestrian
Correct.
interface
I was
and where
going
you-
there.
and where you have intersections,
Right, intersections.
because your lights don't turn when you turn, so they
Right.
don't light the cross streets and things like that. That's where lighting is actually useful. Where it becomes questionable is on a highway, between interchanges on an interstate, even in a city. Why do they bother to light that is beyond me. But
Yeah.
Any rate, so
Um,
the other thing that we have to do to get there, because you're never going to be able to educate everybody, we need ordinances. At some point, you have to force responsible conduct. And if you could get 10% of the population to understand the problem, you can. I think that the theory is out there, or actual practice. If 10% of the population is motivated, you can get things like ordinances passed. So you don't have to educate everybody, but ultimately you got to educate enough to get the ordinances in place. And here in Little Rock, we're going to have an ordinance. It's supposed to be put on the agenda next week for a vote the following week. We've been working on that for 2 years too.
That'll be interesting to see what happens. Scott,
No.
did you have another
Yeah,
comment?
Hazari he says, hi, Bruce, great sharing and thank you. He says he's looking at the global stats on lightpollutionmap.info. There are countries that manage to decrease VIIRS trend significantly, such as Vanuatu and Yemen. Perhaps wonder what they did differently, despite now with efforts of awareness on light pollution, still sadly, the majority of the countries show upward trends in sky brightness. Mike Wiesner says, I was the chair of the IDA Dark Sky Places Committee when Buffalo National River was approved. They did a great job.
They
Boy,
being
thanks. Glad
Scott.
to hear that.
I mean, Scott, they being Bruce McMath.
Bruce McMath.
Yeah, they is Bruce
collective
McMath
they.
mostly.
Well, there was Casey Johansson, the park ranger, was pretty damn important.
Yes, but
And the electrician, Rick, who said I was a pain in his assets. But when we replaced the walkway lights to the showers, we replaced 40-watt incandescent with 2-watt LEDs. He said it was like two lightning bugs in a can, but they were sufficient. All you're trying to do is mark the walkway.
right, and it works. I've been there in those
Yeah.
parks. It works. And they also
raised-
changed the color of lighting inside the bathhouses and bathrooms and things like that. Minor change, nobody even notices.
Yeah, we put in amber
Right.
lighting to reduce the loss of visibility. When you come out of the bathroom, you can see better than you could
Yep.
in the past with the fluorescent light.
Absolutely.
So he brought up the light pollution map in a time that your commenter, and which ties in real well with what I wanted to show real quick. And that is, here's Flagstaff, and with an SQM reading of 20.71 in the heart of the city. 20.71 in the heart of the city.
Okay, so
Now-
talk about what SQM is there and what the numbers mean.
Well,
for-
basically that means that the brightness of the sky is what it would have if you had a 20.71 magnitude star. If the only light it had was that of 21.71 magnitude stars in each square arc second.
Which SQM stands for Sky Quality Meter, right?
Yeah,
And-
yes.
And a perfectly dark sky is 22.
It's supposed to be 22, but if you look at data from some of the darkest observatories in the world, I've not seen one yet that actually measures 22.
Right.
It's a theoretical. I guess it's a theoretical number, but you can get real close to it. I've seen some that are real close to 22. But that's Flagstaff. Now I'm going to show you Conway, Arkansas, which is
The population at Flagstaff is 72,000. Okay.
and the population in Conway is 66,000, and it's 2.5 times brighter. No, excuse me, 6 times 6 times brighter. The sky in the downtown Conway is 6 times brighter than somewhat larger Flagstaff. Now, you might say to some extent that's impacted by the proximity to Little Rock, and it might be to some small measure, but not right there in the middle of that town. That's going to be endemic to Conway. Now, contrary-wise, you go to Phoenix, 18.66. That's about what Conway has, and it has somewhat influenced by, Tucson. It's somewhat influenced by Phoenix, and it's got about the same light pollution as Conway, and it's 500,000 people.
No. Phoenix population, I just looked it up, 1.6 million people.
Okay, well, I stand corrected.
1.6 million people, and their sky brightness is in downtown Phoenix is the same brightness as Conway, Arkansas, 67,000 or whatever it was people.
That's right. And then here's Little Rock for comparison, and it's brighter than Tucson, and the metropolitan area is maybe 400,000 at most, a fourth or so the size of Tucson. And then just look when you get outside these communities, how dark it gets. Of course, it's rural areas, but you can take Arkansas, and it doesn't look like that. I don't have one of Arkansas. And even with 2 national forests, there is no naturally dark place in the state of Arkansas.
You know, that picture you had from Boston, Arkansas, is fairly close to one of the darkest areas in the United States, or in Arkansas.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's out in the national forest. It's the headwaters for the White River, the War Eagle River, the Buffalo River, Richland Creek, Big Piney, Mulberry. You know, there's a bunch of popular floating rivers come off that, and it's pretty isolated, but it's not nearly as dark as it was when that picture was taken in 2011 or whatever it was. So
Probably not. It's things are working against us still.
This is an old picture now. This picture is like ancient.
By the way, we are working on improving Arkansas legislation in this area. As Representative Steve Meeks from the Greenbrier area has put a bill up every year for I don't know how many years, it used to be it couldn't even get out of the committee most years. It finally got it out of committee last time around, but Entergy was an opponent. The city of Little Rock used to oppose it. I think they've gone away. Entergy's gone away. Last time it was the co-ops.
Right.
And so we had a meeting with all the co-op heads. We've actually had a couple of meetings with co-ops, but we had Steve and I addressed a body of the co-op engineers and directors last week, in fact, trying to sell them on this idea that they need to get on the right side of this issue.
What was their reception?
Well, it didn't seem adverse. Most of them didn't say much. The 2 people that did say, you're talking about 50 people in the room. The 2 people that spoke up were affirmative.
There are a couple of rural electric cooperatives in Arkansas that have gone to full cutoff shields.
Yeah, well, we got Carroll Electric because they serve the middle of the Buffalo. I was hoping to make them an example, and we met with them and talked to them, and they went with the right color and they went with 0 cutoff, but they went with a wattage that's way too high. I mean, 78 watt, I think it is. I think just let me take you back to Gilbert with 28. So 28 watts would have been about right. And I can't talk them out of the 78 watt. There's a failure to understand that when you go with white light, you don't need, it's not only do you not need as many watts with an LED, if you have anything remotely like white light, you don't need as many lumens. And the Federal Energy Administration has said as much, talking about street lights, but it's hard to explain that to people, and we haven't been able to succeed with Carroll Electric. And so I haven't made an effort to go to any of the other co-ops and sell this because I don't have an example yet. I say I haven't. I did talk to Petty Jean briefly, the manager one day. I really need to follow up with that. But I'm hoping with the buy-in we've gotten from Searcy County and Gilbert. Searcy County dedicated its fundraising banquet last year, or was it last year or year before last, to its dark skies. And so I'm hoping that's ultimately, if we can get this festival pulled off, that we can use that to leverage the local co-op up there and finally get us a proper example. So I know we've probably run out of time and I'm going to skip these. I usually talk about how this light pollution is just part of a bigger problem, general environmental problem. And then say what we're really just asking people to do is to do what the illumination engineers tell us is proper lighting. And then a list of what you can do. And of course, obviously you can review your own lighting and make sure that you're following these 4 principles, and that you're not trespassing on your neighbors, and so forth.
So
And
what are
then-
these? Go over those principles. I think that's
Okay.
important to spend a second
Okay.
here, Bruce.
Yeah. So make sure you need the light. That's the first thing. Make sure that that it's properly shielded so that you're illuminating the area you need illuminated when you need it illuminated. If this is for security purposes, put it on a timer. It'll be more effective. As I say, make sure it's not aimed outside your property. Choose luminaries that are full cutoff. I've sort of repeated myself there, and get the right color lighting. So use it when you need it, where you need it, and the amount you need it, in the right color. 4 principles.
I'm going to add the right color because I've been saying those first 3, and I'm going to start saying the fourth to when I have those conversations. And I think it's critical. You're saying think globally, but act locally.
That's right. Exactly.
Right. Deal with
And
your
then-
front porch first.
That's right. And that light on your front porch doesn't stop at your property line. So, it just keeps going till it runs into something. So you can join IDA. Last I checked, it's just $35. And I'm surprised how few people in our hobby don't belong to IDA. If you're here in Arkansas, join the Arkansas Natural Sky Association's Facebook page. It's free. We got beautiful photographs get posted there all the
Yes,
time.
sir. Yes, sir.
Nightscape images, not astronomical, not astronomy images for the most part. We have an activist group you can join if you want to volunteer. And then of course now we have dues paying memberships. And so you can visit our website, Arkansas Natural Sky, the darkskyarkansas.com, and catch up on what we're doing. We've got the fall festival coming next October. We are not going to cancel it, hell or high water. And
Well, high water might cause it to cancel, but
it might.
that'd be the only reason.
Yeah. So that's my little presentation. Believe it or not, that's truncated.
Yeah, I saw the slides.
Well, there's a lot to say. There's a
Well,
lot.
we did a lot of chatting along the way.
So, Scott, what else you got? Any more comments popping up?
Tarek says, how many people in the world vote against light pollution? And more important, how strong are their voices? That could be a problem in some countries where, the general population doesn't have much of a voice. So that's definitely something to consider there.
IDA has a chapter in a lot of countries, though, and they're always looking to start new ones.
Tariq is a great candidate in the UAE.
Yes. And Pekka says, if we could get a team consisting of astronomers, entomologists, insect scientists, psychologists, doctors, police, and biologists together to fight against LP, it'd probably go faster.
Common ties. That's why I talked about last week about, entomology. That's not intrinsically about light pollution. Talking about the health effects is not intrinsically about light pollution. You You find the bedfellows that fit well to achieve your goal. Dark skies may not be their goal, but the same thing affects their goal as well. And that's why putting together coalitions builds momentum for what we're talking about.
And I got to say again, that the Missouri chapter of the IDA is doing some really great work. And they have put together this Mid-States Lights Out Alliance about the Audubon and bird thing. And they've got Audubon chapters from all over Missouri, Kansas, and several other states. They've got zoos, they've got museums in their group. They've done a great job of building, and universities building coalitions. And I have hoping we can we need Audubon here. We joined, ANSA joined the Mid-States Lights Out program, but we need to get our Audubon people. And again, I'm hoping after the festival, we will succeed in that. Audubon chapters are participating or lined up to participate in our festival next fall, and were for this last fall. And but we need that's sort of a cornerstone that we need to make that work. And then we can try to replicate that here in Arkansas.
So the Illinois Engineering Society, is that a huge organization that all lighting people are involved in, or is it more of not a widespread trade organization, but more of a lobbying group?
No, it's a widespread trade organization. And the IES, anytime you're dealing with lighting, we were talking about highway lighting earlier, that they will have committees that are involved in that with the Federal Highway Administration and the transportation engineers. And they set standards on indoor lighting and outdoor lighting and all kinds of settings and circumstances. You can look up, like I mentioned earlier, in that apartment complex. You can look up in their books on what they recommend for that open area there between the buildings and so forth. They've what you need in a parking lot, what you need on a sidewalk, and so forth.
So, wrap it up, Bruce. What's your closing statement?
Well, we just need to work on this, and we need people to have faith. I think that's part of the problem. And that'll be my closing statement. I think part of the problem in our hobby is people tend to have the attitude there's nothing you can do about it except get filters and fancy cameras and work around it. And it's just not true. You can impact it. At first, it's going to be a slow process, but I like to say that if we had the kind of energy that they have in the gun hobby, you'd have to have a license to use a flashlight. If we got people interested in this, and they voted based on it, and they worked their city council like we're going to ask people to do over the weekend in Little Rock, we would get ordinances and we would begin to address this problem. Because nobody's got an interest in perpetrating or perpetuating the problem except ignorance and utilities.
Right.
And the utilities are going to change, by the way, because when we all got electric cars, when are we going to charge them?
At night.
Yeah.
I'm curious, Bruce, out of your long career in defending dark skies, what would you say is like really one of your hallmark, one of the most proud achievement you have?
The Buffalo River.
Yeah.
Getting the Buffalo River designated, because the Buffalo River resonates in this state. And that's an entree for educating the environmental community, because all the environmental groups in this state are all about the buffalo and protecting the buffalo. So the minute the Buffalo River becomes an international dark sky park, they want to know why. And then they start to get educated. Plus the park educates. It has, of course, it's been impacted by the virus here recently, but I think they've resumed. They have night sky programming. And they talk about why they have protected their skies and the impacts of light pollution. So that's the single biggest thing or accomplishment we've had so far.
And they make you turn your lights off, outside lights off in the campgrounds. They won't let you light up your campground, like a Christmas tree all night long. They will tell you, turn your lights off.
And this has led to some interest by the state parks. We've had inquiries from Ouachita State Park and Mount Magazine. We were diligently working on getting Mount Magazine designated International Dark Sky Park when the COVID thing hit, and so that got put on hold. They're not having any programming, and that got shelved. But we're also talking to the Ouachita State. They contacted us. I don't know that they can qualify. They're right on the cusp, but they can become an urban sky park.
Right.
And these are great education resources, and they put on programming. They take people out in the lake on boats and give them star parties.
To get away from the lights.
To get away from the hot springs lights.
Yeah.
The park itself is pretty dark.
Yeah. There's all sorts of opportunities for the urban dark sky parks. Pea Ridge National Military Park up here. Hobbs is not dark enough. It'll have to be an urban dark sky park. But and there's been conversations about doing that with both those parks. But it's they're interested in doing it.
That would be wonderful. And every one of them then becomes a spokesperson.
Correct. Right. And they can point to a good light fixture. And I say this all the time. You don't recognize when you see a good light fixture because it's unobtrusive. The light's just there, and you don't notice the fact that, gee whiz, look at that. That's a great light fixture until you learn to see it, and then you recognize them as you drive down the road.
Yeah.
And you see what's going on.
When you learn what good lighting is, it's an aggravating process to be out at night in an urban setting because there's so much bad lighting and it just irritates you.
I have taken the idea that what we're working on is for my great grandchildren. This is not really even about necessarily for my grandchildren, who are 13, 7 or 13, 6, 4, and 2. This is for their kids, that we're working to let them maybe as they are in their adulthood because it's taken us 50 or 100 years to get here. It's not going to go away in 5 years.
No, but it's going to happen.
It's going to happen.
It'll be how fast it's going to happen. And the more we work on it, the faster it'll be.
All right.
We're making some progress.
Scott, anything else?
Trek is still commenting here. He says, I went out to bring my very, very late dinner, and my yard is almost lit by streetlights, and I can't see stars good enough, but the seeing today isn't good. He's just talking about what's happening out there. Hazy nights, of course, are the worst, and LED lights is like magnifying it and spreading it all over.
To put into Rex's commitment to being on these shows, it's 2:30 a.m. in the UAE.
Yeah. Right.
And we appreciate that.
Yes, we do.
We appreciate that dedication.
It is a definite concern for all of us for so many reasons, for our own health, for our own sanity, to have proper lighting, and individual people can make a huge difference. I mean, there were individuals who made Yellowstone a national park, an individual who made the Grand Canyon a national park. You can make a difference, and so you just need to be dedicated. And I have my one story that I'm most proud of is back in, I think it was the early 90s, when Discovery Channel Networks was going to put up their new building in Silver Springs, Maryland, and they had an architectural rendering of it, and they had like this spotlight that was going to aim up into the sky to be able to be seen from the space shuttle. And this is something that they were bragging about. And I happen to have worked on John Hendricks's observatory at his ranch. John Hendricks is the CEO of Discovery Channel, founder of Discovery Channel. And they said, how could Discovery Channel, of all networks, okay, contribute like that to light pollution? And they made a change. They changed their entire, I mean, I don't know what this cost, okay? I'm sure it cost quite a bit to change the architectural renderings and to not include this. So I felt like that was a sincere win, you know?
It was a conversation by one person to one person.
Yeah. And so it's like that. One thing I also noticed too is that when I was a kid, I remember seeing spotlights aimed at the sky, like what you would see, you know, in wartime movies, you know, and I don't see that anymore. And I don't know if it's because
it still happens around here. There's a company that literally has World War II spotlights mounted on trailers, and
they drive them out for events, I guess.
They will shine them up in the sky at night to try and get people to come see where those spotlights are when people open a new store in the mall or whatever. Now, I haven't seen them in a couple of years, but they're, you know, within the last few years, they've been active. And literally these things are, I actually asked, and they're literally World War II spotlights.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they are a wee bit bright.
Yes, they are. Yes, they are.
I sure appreciate y'all inviting me to be on, and I appreciate you having this topic. And I've got your speaker for next week, I think, Kent.
Tell me who it is offline, and
I will. I'll send you a link.
Do that. I'd appreciate that.
All right.
And I've thought of another one just while we're on the show, so I've actually started reaching out to that person as well. So yeah, who knows? But yeah, shoot me that as soon as we get off, so I can start working on that. Bruce, thanks for coming. I appreciate it, and thank you for your efforts along the Buffalo River. It's the longest and narrowest international dark sky park in the world, I believe, is its claim to fame.
I bet that's right.
it averages half a mile wide, and it's 152 miles long, or something like that.
Yeah. And I enjoy your eyepieces, by the way.
Oh, thank you very much.
Good night, guys.
Pleasure.
Thanks, Bruce.
Take care. Hope to see you again soon. Take care.